Welcome to the train station. All aboard or all are bored?
Welcome back, everyone, to the Train Station podcast, where we are very, very thrilled to share an insightful conversation with a more remarkable individual, the Honorable Antoinette Perry. Her honor is the 42nd Lieutenant Governor of Prince Edward Island and the 29th since Confederation, who has been serving her community and province with dedication and passion for many years. Before her honor's term as Lieutenant Governor, her honor enjoyed a distinguished 32-year career as an educator, teaching music and French at Tignish Consolidated Elementary School. Her honor is also an organist and church choir director at St. Simon and St. Jude's Parish, and has been actively involved in many community and cultural organizations, including the West Prince Arts Council and the Tignish Historical Preservation Society. In this episode, we'll delve into the role and importance of the Lieutenant Governor and explore her honor's lifelong passion for music, teaching, and community service. We'll also learn about her honor's involvement in the restoration of her honor's parish, Majestic, Oregon, and her honor's love for cooking, yoga, travel, and discovering hidden treasures on Prince Edward Island. So sit back, relax, and join us for an inspiring conversation with the Honorable Antoinette Perry. Thank you very much, Your Honor, for joining us today.
It's
we really
my pleasure.
appreciate the time. Thank you very much. Yeah.
My pleasure.
First and foremost, I think we could begin. Could you kind of provide us with more information of what your role as Lieutenant Governor is and what that consists of?
Okay, so the Lieutenant Governor is a position which is entrenched in our government system, but this position is a title position, so I have no say per se in the governance of our province. But this position is the head of state for the province. So my main role, my first role, is to ensure that there always is a premier active in the province. So the president of the Executive Council. So what I do is I represent the head of state for all of Canada, who is the monarch. In my case, when I came into the position on October 20th, 2017, it was our late Queen Elizabeth II who was the monarch. And we were asked to meet within 6 months of our appointment. I'll speak a little later about the impact of that encounter. So basically the position is to give royal assent to any action that is needed with the government. So be it to open legislature, to close, to read the speech from the throne, to prorogue the assembly, any of those actions, and I have to give my royal assent, give my signature. It's the same as when a cabinet is chosen, they're sworn in, I'm to witness that, and I have to sign. Any law which is passed in the Legislative Assembly, before it can become active or become law, I have to sign. So, for example, during the pandemic, to give you a very concrete one, many things were changed in how we do things on the island. So if it was, for example, stopping people from coming on the island and checking them before they could come into the island, well, which was against our hospitality reputation too, you know. But even for that to happen, that directive from the Public Health Office and the government, I had to sign in order for that to be allowed to happen. So I guess you get the gist of it there. So in the case of Premier, so should a Premier resign or become incapacitated for any reason, well then I would have to sign the documentation for an interim leader, and then but I would have to sign the documentation for to launch an election, so the writ, to drop the writ. Now when I do that, like a couple of years ago, when I do that, we have 26 to 32 days exactly where we have to have that election. It has to be held in that time frame, and that's a constitutional fact. So I sign it today, and I have 26 to 32 days in which to hold that election. And they usually have them on a Monday, and you know there could be exceptions, but very rarely. And so that's one of the things there, my constitutional duties. And of course, the speech from the throne, you've heard me read it probably, takes about 55 minutes. It's actually a recipe or a guide or directives on what the government expects to be able to complete, the work they want to complete in this session. So, and then sometimes, like I don't read a speech from the throne at every opening, because if the work wasn't finished, but before the pandemic, or right after the pandemic, I'm sorry, when they realized how much of an impact it did have on us, I mean, nobody knew what was down the road, I had to prorogue the legislature because they couldn't continue the work that they had planned, because here we were faced with so many changes in our whole province and how things were to happen, like what monies were going to go where. We had to take monies from some places to help to alleviate the pressure on the medical system, and there were so many factors there that didn't make any sense to continue the same path. So proroguing is not necessarily a negative thing, right? And I think sometimes we think of it as being negative because it could be self-serving for a leader or something. But no, proroguing it was necessary because we had to change, take it to another direction. So that's my legislative duties or constitutional duties. I also have ceremonial duties, many ceremonies that I attend, either presentation of awards and that, where I can recognize people for their contributions, or even we have quite a nice ceremony when we swear in the new cabinet, for example, or if there's a switch in ministers, that too. That's a smaller ceremony, but it's still good. Yeah. So we have ceremonies, and then here at Government House, we have quite a few hospitality events as well. For example, in this room is where I would meet dignitaries or like ambassadors, consuls. So when they make their first trip to Prince Edward Island after they've been appointed to that role, they're coming to PEI to look at maybe the climate change thing. They're coming to UPEI maybe to see what's going on with the vet college or whatever it might be, or the potato industry. We're leaders in the world. And they come here for their first visit as a courtesy visit. It's to let me know that they're in my province, being the head of state, this position. And then we have a 45-minute exchange approximately. And then there are no strategic government questions posed to me because I'm not in a position to answer them. I don't give opinions on government if what they decide, and that I don't give opinions on that. My role is a titular role. It's the head of state, and I have to work within my parameters. Yeah. Although sometimes it's hard to keep my tongue in my pocket. I'm just saying. I'd like to express my opinion sometimes. Being the extrovert that I am and having opinions, but I have to refrain from that. With my closest friends I do, and I have some confidants and some mentors that I have frank discussions with. But no, in the public, no, I never express my opinion on how the government is governing. No. Not that. And when I read this speech from the throne too, it's my government, because this is the head of state position. It's not about me, it's about the role of the Lieutenant Governor, the position of Lieutenant Governor. And we pronounce it Lieutenant. Lieutenant is American, and we go with the British pronunciation. So in French, it's Lieutenant Gouverneur, and I say it in feminine form because I am a female. And but the position itself is lieutenant-gouverneur, la position de lieutenant-gouverneur.
Yeah.
And lieutenant-gouverneur, in English, lieutenant governor.
Yeah. Your Honor, I guess one of the honors, when you become appointed as the Lieutenant Governor, there is a kind of a heraldic coat of arms that some Lieutenant Governors actually get commissioned. I'm curious about yours, because
Yes.
I think it's a wonderful one, and maybe you
Yes.
can
I
explain
can-
it to us. But also, does every Lieutenant Governor who actually gets appointed actually get one created?
Oh yes, it's a privilege which is offered to us, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the Canadian Heraldic Association who takes care of all that. So Mine took about 18 months to complete. There were a few little glitches that we couldn't seem to get clearly. And essentially it goes back to the Middle Ages with the whole idea of a coat of arms. It was to identify the armies where they came from then. So thus the helmet they usually had. Now, the former Governor General, she had a space helmet because she had gone to the space station. So they gave her permission to put a space helmet. So in the crest is really the core of your being. So with me, I'd worked quite tirelessly on collecting $150,000 to completely restore the Louis Mitchell pipe organ in Tignish Church, St. Simon and St. Jude Parish. And it was a labor of love. It's a legacy to, well, my both grandmothers played it, my mother, my sister, relatives, and it was a continuation. The sisters had taken really good care of it at the convent and that. So it was really important to save the instrument. So we had it completely restored instead of renovated. It was restored to its original condition, and it was. And to this day, I still play it. So I made a promise when I came here that I would continue to play and accompany my choirs. So I go the first and the fifth Sundays of the month, and it's my connection with my community. Don't forget, when you're appointed to a position like this. Recognition is given then to your contribution to your community. So for me, I always had a vested interest in my community. That's why I decided to teach there, to carry the legacy of, my mother was a teacher before, and the sisters. It was very important that I had my career there, and most of my relatives are there, but it's that community where I grew up in, you know. And I think the impact I felt of that too was after I visited with Her Majesty, which I'll come to after. But anyway, so this, and then music, of course, is the core of my being. And really, and liturgical music is my number one for giving me the fulfillment, the spiritual connection. It was through liturgical music that I was able to discover our true spiritual instead of religious, to make a difference with the two. And then here, so the blue jay being our provincial bird, I have the wings out because I came out of retirement into a full-time position, and belonging to the viceregal family, there's a little crown on top. Now this is the Acadian star on the Acadian flag. So the Acadian flag is represented here, blue, white, and red, and I am Acadian, both parents are Acadian. Were Acadian, and I put the flag there because it was presented to me in 2019 when we had the first of the World Acadian Congresses. It was a shared partnership with Moncton in 2019 when this was presented to me. So I felt that my culture was really elevated, so I wanted it in the beak of the blue jay. Then this crown, my mother had received, the first big recognition she received was in 1991. Was a citation for citizenship, which would be similar to the Canadian merit, the Order of Canada, which would be similar for her contributions to the community. And the little pin, I inherited it. It's got 4 gold maple leaves on it. So I put this crown with the 4. And also my dad had a red maple we had given him for Father's Day, and he absolutely loved that tree. It was just something else. So I put the veins in gold to kind of match my mother's pin, and then of course the red maple leaf being on our Canadian flag. It's our identifying symbol, if you want. And so that takes care of this. So it's my connection to my family and that. Then here, the supporters here, I put a collar of summer savory and oregano. I love to cook. And my grandmother and mother taught me to cook with summer savory. That was about the only herb we used around here at the time, or in the earlier years. And my sister had moved to Boston in the early 1960s and learned how to cook Italian food, which I love. I love. And so I learned to cook the Italian food with the oregano. So that's my sort of my shout out to my love of cooking. And then the 2 supporters, so the Doberman Pinscher, and this is kind of a sad part of it, but a very real part, and I really needed to put that. So I had a guard dog once with a business that I own, a restaurant, and someone purposely killed her. They lassoed her and they dragged her behind a vehicle till she died. And she was, I loved her, and she was my protector. She was almost an extension of my soul. She knew probably what I was going to do. And so it definitely is my shout out against abuse to animals. And I strongly present that message every time, especially with youth when I go into the schools or whatever. And you know, then why dogs? Well, sometimes it's bears, sometimes it's wolves, whatever. So with that, I find it's important to send that message out there. Now you will notice her ears are tipped or peaked and her tail is nubbed. They don't do that anymore because that's considered abuse to animals. So, but she was trained as a guard dog. We had bought her as a guard dog. So, and then on the island, I am so proud of the base because they finally got the island right. You know, people from off island sometimes don't realize fully what an island is. So I said,
No.
Google it, Google it. I kept on telling them, Google it, you'll find the color of the soil. Well, it turned out just so beautifully because the sand is so close to the color of our sand, and the capes too.
Yep.
And then the water does go around the island because at first the water was just going partly. It's an island.
That's right.
So anyways, we got that right, and you know, my wish is that someday maybe they could incorporate this one into the island, the new one that was, what year was it signed again? The new coat of arms for PEI, I forget what year, 2002 maybe? I'm not good at remembering. It would be lovely if they could take, now that they got it right, and put that design it. That's, I'm just saying in passing. And then we have, we have 8 oak leaves because the red oak, of course, it being our tree, and every high school or every school in PEI should have a red oak in the front yard because they were given as a gift from the government in the year 2000 to mark the millennium. Yeah. So, and then you'll notice that I put the leaves and they are green. They just fell because I know they dry up and they turn brown. I know that, but they just fell. And I chose not to put the acorns because, and kids get a great kick out of this. They look too much like rabbit turds. So
Yeah.
I said,
So
I'm
there
going
you
to
go.
go with the leaves. Yeah.
Go.
And I have 8 siblings, so there's 8 leaves there. I had 2 brothers, one has passed. 2 brothers and 6 sisters, so there's 9 children in the family. So 8 siblings. And then there's the Lady Slipper. And an uncle of mine was a priest, and he was very involved in the AA movement, so mental health and that. And so I admired him. I spent a lot of time with him. So when we were teenagers, he would have talks with us, and one of them he said, you know, you've got to learn to live one day at a time. So that's why my motto is one day at a time, un jour à la fois. And I chose the French and English. They're the 2 official languages in Canada, and not many people understand the Latin anymore. So being the 21st century, I said, okay, I'm going to go with the 2 languages there. So that's basically it. And then my honors, so the Order of PEI, just by definition of being appointed the Lieutenant Governor of the province, you are then the Chancellor of the Order of PEI. And we present 3 recipients every year on the island with the Order of PEI. There are usually between 40 and 50 nominations, and there's a committee of 9 people, independent, who select the 3 recipients. We have the big ceremony. I told you about ceremonies. We have the big ceremony here. It's lovely, with a reception afterwards. It's lovely. And for me to be able to honor islanders for what they contribute to the island way of life, that's a pretty special part of this whole position. I think I covered everything there. So that's my coat of arms. And Madame Payette had signed it. She was the Governor General at the time. But when I was, it was David Johnson, the former His Excellency David Johnson, who actually signed my certificate when I came in, because she was installed 3 weeks before me. So he was still in office when I got the word in September of 2017.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
Yeah.
an
I'm pleased with how it turned out.
Oh yeah.
It's very difficult to decide, to choose what things to put. I could have represented my siblings in the middle too if I wanted, but it's just, there's, you have to do a lot of soul searching. Actually, it's an expression of who you are. So many teachers, after I go to the schools to present, or I do some online as well, they get the students to create their own coat of arms, going with the guidelines that you can find in with Heritage Canada. The guidelines are all there with the coat of arms. Yeah. So it's an interesting process.
That's truly I mean, a lot more work goes into it than I could have ever imagined.
Yes.
18 months, right, too.
That's-
Like, I mean, it's not done overnight.
And then you will be receiving a copy. I make postcards of them. I give them out, and then you can see the descriptor that I put. I in the style of Lucy Maud Montgomery, I described my beautiful island. I'm a proud islander, and I let everyone know.
I mean, you probably covered this before. I mean, you kind of foreshadowed it. But during your time as Lieutenant Governor, you've likely met, and I mean, as you foreshadowed earlier, you met a lot of individuals from different walks of life. Could you share a particular memorable encounter or event that has had a significant impact on you?
Well, it would have to be when I met the late Queen, Her Majesty. I know it was required of us to go within the 6 months of being appointed, but just to be in her presence, anything you've heard, any descriptors you've heard about her, they're correct. She never gave opinions on things, and then I can't divulge what questions per se she had, or the answers that she gave me, and that were debriefed after that encounter. So I was fortunate to have a 20-minute private audience with her. Now sometimes if a Lieutenant Governor has a partner or a spouse, they go with them, or you can bring a parent, or you can bring a child or a sibling. But I couldn't bring Cindy, although my assistant, she came with me to London, and she waited in the waiting room in Buckingham Palace, but she couldn't come in that living room per se. So my instructions were take 3 steps in and stop, and Her Majesty will approach you, and when she extends her hand, you're to curtsy. So if you look at the other picture I have in the office, the top picture, I'm at least a head taller than she is, but here we're about the same height because I did curtsy. So I did that on purpose. I framed 2 pictures on purpose, just to show that I did follow instructions and I did curtsy, and I didn't knock myself over or, God forbid, throw her off balance. I was so afraid of that. So anyway, and I sat in the chair on this side and she sat in the other chair, and she put her purse on the chair. And so when she touched her purse at the end, somebody gives her a cue. I can't see who it is. It's the same person that probably who took the pictures. Someone takes 3 pictures and 3 pictures only. And so when she touched the purse, it was over, you see. So then I thanked her, and I hope she would enjoy the gifts. And then she remembered, oh, we haven't looked at the gifts. So I actually eked out an extra 5 minutes. I'm just saying, you know. And I described the gifts and to her, and she was very gracious, a very positive person, so knowledgeable. Now, she was 92 when I went to see her. Absolutely clear. She never wavered in, like, her thought pattern was absolutely right on. She knew everything she needed to know about me, the world situation. We covered many topics, again, at her request, you know, she would ask. And then, but I clearly recall coming out of that room and just walking over the threshold, and I just looked up, and this one's for you, Mom, because my mother really mentored me to prepare me for an audience like this. My mother would have loved that in her life, and she always would mention that, you know. And that's the only negative thing I can see about this whole role, is that my parents didn't have a chance to experience this with me. But coming out, and you know, the impact hit me later on as I was trying to fall asleep that night to breathe, and just thinking of the impact, and so, you know, here I am from little Tignish, 1,000 people in the village per se, now it's a town, you know, a teacher, Acadian, unassuming person, just connected with my community really, and giving my life to my community. And here I meet the most impactful woman in the whole world, the most recognizable woman, and most leaders of state or heads of state respected her. There were a few glitches, but we won't mention them right now. Yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to meeting His Majesty, who I haven't met personally. He has been here before. They have been here before. They've stayed here at Government House, and so that was my Christmas card this year. They send me a Christmas card every year, and I send them the card. They were supposed to come to visit in May to Canada, and we were hoping that the whole Vice-Regal family would be able to meet him. There's 14 of us, and but that had to be put off due to his health. So we're just hoping. I'm looking forward to meeting him and hoping that I'm still here. Just to go back a bit, so when I'm appointed, I don't think I explained this, did I?
No.
No.
Is it okay if I go ahead?
No,
So when I was appointed, someone suggested my name or nominated me for this position. The time was up to replace the Lieutenant Governor. And in our Constitution it says that you're appointed for a period of time no less than 5 years. So it's not a termed position per se, and that's in our Constitution. So someone suggested my name, so I got a call from the Prime Minister's office in August of 2017, August the 4th to be, it was kind of impactful, and I was sitting down when I got the call. And that if the Prime Minister was to call me and ask me if I would accept the position of Lieutenant Governor, what would I say? So they wanted to know if I would even entertain the idea, if I would even like this position. Oh, definitely would be a complete honor. So from then we had to go through the process, and the Prime Minister called me in mid-September and asked me the question, and we conversed in French, his first language and my first language. And and then that was a Tuesday evening, and the Thursday morning, His Excellency Johnson signed my documents and called me to say that it would be announced officially at 5 o'clock Eastern or whatever time it was that night. Yeah. So, and that's kind of how it happened. So our Constitution has really clear things. It's like the monarch being the head of state. That is entrenched in our Constitution. Now, the only way it could be changed is every province and territory would have, or every province would have to agree to the change. So if you open up the Constitution, you're opening up anything then in the Constitution. So, it's a sobering second thought that you kind of have to give that. But also in there it describes what the duties or what the privileges of the head of state would be in Canada, because we control our own governance system, and we're in control. We don't have to ask permission to England. We are a part of the Commonwealth, yes. We have other countries which have the monarch. I think there are 14, I'm not sure it's 14 or 15 now, who have the monarch as their head of state. But we have 56 members in the British Commonwealth. So they would be allied forces or allied countries, yeah.
Your Honor, just a quick question now.
Sure.
Like the transition from like an outgoing Lieutenant Governor to an incoming one, like is it a smooth transition, or is there a period where there?
It's a very short period of time. Actually, for the island here, there was one Lieutenant Governor in recent history who only had 2 weeks to prepare, like when they got the call from the Prime Minister's office. My predecessor, Mr. Lewis, I think it was 5 weeks that he had. And then the administrators have to sort of close the books on one and open the books on the other. It's a very intense time. And for me, I was kind of panicking because the places to rent on the island aren't plentiful, and I was looking around my hometown of Tignish, and my apartment, my oldest sister is renting it, so I had a lot of things to organize. So I did have a retirement house built for myself and a sister, so the two of us share the house, so that when I'm finished here I have a home to go to. But I had to really do that because I was getting a little too anxious about, if I get a call, where am I going to go? In the basement of my brother's house, basement of my sister's house? Where am I going to live? I'd like to have all my things in one house. I'd like to be able to play my own piano. So home is very important. So I went ahead and did that. So when I get the call, and I had begun even taking some of the things that I couldn't store at my sister's, that I had brought here, 6.5 years ago. So there's all that, but the transition time, I find, and this is my own personal opinion, is inadequate. We should get more ahead time really, to know that we're going, so we could really organize things better, and then it wouldn't be so hectic for the house here too. Now the other thing is the employees here are hired by the Department of Transportation, and it's not guaranteed that they'll stay. So if an incoming Lieutenant Governor wants to bring their own support staff, they can. So it's hard on the staff too if they don't know, you know. So that's a bit of a negative line on it. Yeah, I find it's inadequate amount of time. Like I will get probably 3 weeks, maybe 4 at the very most, to pack my bags and go. So it's yeah.
And you actually live in the residence?
Oh yes, I do.
So
Yes.
this is
The home of the Lieutenant Governor. Yes. When Governor Fanning, the first governor, gave this land, that's why they call it Fanning Bank. It's on the bank of the Hillsborough River, high up, and it was Governor Fanning who gave. He had 100 acres to give to the city of Charlottetown. 10 acres was to be reserved for the residence of the Lieutenant Governor, because he was a former governor.
Yes.
Now, and I'll explain that in a second. Then 60 acres to Victoria Park, and 30 acres to the old hospital there, where the Alban Arsenal building is, the
Yes.
old PI hospital. And so I'm the 42nd Lieutenant Governor, or Governor, if you want to put, but only the 29th Lieutenant Governor, because in 1851, so it was before Confederation, actually. I know there's some of the documents say it differently, but actually it is 1851 when we elected our first responsible government. The position became then a titular position, Lieutenant Governor, where we then represented the monarch. And then all the duties for governance were handed over to a premier, because we had just elected a responsible government. Before that, the governors governed, and they answered to the colony, the Bureau of the Colonies, or I kind of forget what it was called there, the Office of the Colonies.
Oh, the Colonial Office, yeah.
Yeah, the Colonial Office in London, you see, because they took care, the Governors Act, they governed. So when this house was built in 1834, they were governing, and over there was where the office was. And the governor, they governed, they collected the fees, the taxes and whatever, and did the governance. So if they had to have rules for roads or whatever, or the division of lands or land protection, whatever you want, they were the ones who did the governing. But this position now is definitely a titular position.
I think I'm going to switch it up a little bit,
Yes.
Your Honor. Your dedication to the arts, especially music, has been evident throughout your professional career. How do you believe the arts contribute to the cultural and social fabric of Prince Edward Island?
Very important. So if you look at even the founding nations, the Acadian, English, Scottish, Irish, and the Indigenous, if you look at even just those 5, and not discounting the newcomers, those cultures are so alive because of the arts. I think is one of the main things. Their language, saving their language, of course, is the first thing, with us saving the French. And there is a renewal now to recapture the old languages. But all the cultural aspects of, how should I put, a group, an ethnic group, like ours came from France. It all forms part of that culture, but then they all contribute to the culture of Prince Edward Island. It's a very Celtic culture we have here.
Yes.
And they all do contribute. So whether it's the food, whether it's the special, like the St. Paddy's Day, who doesn't celebrate, St. Pat? The Scottish celebrations and the haggis. I don't think I'll try eating haggis again. I know what it tastes like. And but all those cultural elements come in, like even if I look at like the Christmas traditions. Well, everyone has their own Christmas traditions, and then when you marry into, or there's a blend of families, it enriches the whole celebrations, I guess is what I want to say. It's like our summers are just full of cultural activities, and I encourage people to just go, get involved, and they say, well, I don't understand French. It doesn't matter. Look at the music. You can't keep your feet still, and you're twitching and whatever. And even like the dinner theaters, all the different dinner theaters we had, those speak of the culture, because a lot of them are written for the culture. Look at the Celtic Performing Arts in Summerside. Peter Gallant, that absolutely amazing story that he wrote, for the coming of the Scottish. And anyway, it's very important, and the music then in our church services as well, in the liturgies. And this is like, that was my promise to myself at a young age, that I would keep on doing that. I was 14 years old, I think thereabouts, when I began really becoming active in music ministry. And I worked more so in the French sector, and so the music contributes to all the activities, be it family gatherings, community gatherings, but also with your spiritual development as well. And for me, that's very important. So, and then we started the music festival up home. Being in a rural area, it's very difficult to access enough private teachers. So for piano, for voice, for whatever, usually they depended on the music teachers in the elementary school, so they burnt us out. But yeah, my first year, I think I had 13 classes in one day. We had 430 students. I had 13 classes. So I had to switch up and get that energy again every 20 minutes or 25 minutes or half hour, depending on what grade level. Like grade 1 said, I think 3 20-minute periods a week. And anyway, and then I taught core French on top of that. It wasn't enough. But then I taught French immersion, because I did go to a French university in Moncton, primarily to save my French. And I studied my music program in French, so I taught the French immersion students in French. And I had a very rich career. It was wonderful. And then I did special ed on the last 10 years as well. I had 3 years as vice principal. I liked that, but then sometimes it was good. I was able to instill different character education was my theme in those 3 years when we'd have assemblies and that. But my schedule was so charged that I felt I needed to back off and then just concentrate my efforts on on the music and the French, because it was a loaded schedule.
Now, Your Honor, serving as a French and music teacher and also a vice principal of Tignish Elementary, prior to your retirement, and then eventually becoming Lieutenant Governor, how do you feel that your career as an educator prepared you for this role?
It was an immense boost to carrying out this role, because like it or not, in a role like this, you're always educating or informing people. Like most people would never realize, I didn't realize how much work was involved in this role. Like I do 400, the first year I was here, 400 connections that I had, events, briefings, whatever and 38 organizations, patronage organizations. And just even to communicate with them, the whole teaching career certainly helped me. And when I had to make decisions on anything, it was always informed decision. That's part of the training from my mother as well. To be educated on a certain topic or to become informed is so important. So when I go to an event and they ask me to just give a few remarks, okay, I might do the theme of the event or whatever, it's short remarks, not very long. Sometimes I'm asked to give a 5-minute speech or a boost or motivational speech. The legions have asked me before, like at the banquets and that. For that, I find that I need to write my own script in order to own it, to be able to deliver it in an impactful way. And that's just me, but I guess it's part of the teaching. If you're not well informed, and especially here I found when we have receptions after an event, well, I'm communicating with the people. If I don't know what I was talking about, it's not very productive, the conversations we have at the end. You're just frivolous, But when they present something and I already read about it, or the theme or whatever, I can jump right in there and really be engaged. And that's the key thing, is that I'm really engaged in this role. I take it very seriously. It's like my executive assistant, Cindy, said when I came in, she said, "Don't forget, Your Honor, you're on duty 24 hours a day, 365 a year for the minimum of 5 years. but you're always on. So if I'm out at a party or out at a festival or anything, I'm always conscious that I hold this position at the moment and that I cannot deviate. And as a teacher, being a professional, we learn to be a professional out in the community. Well, that training too prepared me for this. You have to be, you can't just say what you want. You have to give it a sobering second thought and be informed before, you know, like my mother always said, and I quote this many times, there are times to keep your tongue in your pocket, and there are times to take your tongue out of your pocket,
Yeah.
to speak up for something, right? So, for example, when I go to the schools, I remind the students, when it's your time to go and vote. We have a democratic society. If we want to preserve our democracy, we have to exercise that right to vote. And it's a right, it's a responsibility, but it's a duty. Honestly, that my mother trained us in that way, and that's the way I see it. And I take my tongue out of my pocket, and I do say to the students, it is your duty if we want to preserve our democracy. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, just to follow up on that, Your Honor, I think being, you know, for young people and encouraging young people to vote, I mean, it is probably one of the most important roles that we have as citizens in a
Yes.
democracy.
Yeah.
And just to kind of follow up on terms of your education degree, you know,
Yeah.
your career, your ability to connect with students,
Yes.
connect with parents,
Yes.
connect with community,
Yeah.
has, I think, probably, it's a transferable skill that you were able to bring into the role of Lieutenant Governor, being
Absolutely.
able to connect.
Yeah.
And then connect your role to the community so that, you know, being a Lieutenant Governor is not done in isolation.
No.
No.
If you don't like meeting people, don't even consider coming in this role, because I think you won't be fulfilled, and you'll probably be more frustrated and unhappy.
Overwhelmed. Maybe overwhelmed as well.
And overwhelmed, yeah. If you know, gosh, there's too many people around me all the time. Well, I was used to that. I taught in elementary school, I had big classes, and then your community engagement. So, for example, and I think this is one of the questions coming up, but anyway, one of my favorite things is to be able to present an award or a recognition of some sort to people who give selflessly. So the motto of our late Queen was service above self. That was her motto. And when I can recognize somebody in the community, in the wider island community, rather than just my community of Tignish or West Prince, but I can recognize them for what they've contributed to their community or to the whole island, to me, that is one of the most fulfilling actions that I can do. And second, or maybe as importantly, is connecting with youth, because I taught young people. And I love to see when youth are finding their path and getting on with it. You know, taking a challenge and putting it into an opportunity. You know, like even learning French. Like yesterday I was saying, you know, it's a challenge to learn another language. Absolutely. And the challenge you're feeling right now, if you can overcome that and put the positive energy in there, face that challenge, and you will see that it will be transformed into opportunities when it's time to come and find some work, you know. So for students, a couple of weekends ago, it was the girls who were in the legislature and getting that experience. And I just absolutely love connecting with you. So for you to be interviewing me today is an absolute thrill. Because
Thank you.
I see where your thought patterns are, but also I see that you're engaged enough in the life of your community to undertake this project, which is very important, because your main audience is the youth. And if something that I said today can even have an effect on one youth, then I've succeeded in this engagement.
Very well said, Your Honor. Very well
Yeah.
said.
Very well said.
Thank you.
And you may kind of the shift tracks again here,
Yes.
but you kind of highlighted it like your time that you met the monarch, the late
Mhm.
monarch. And you have a unique opportunity to work very closely within the monarchy. How has that opportunity kind of shown you the importance of the monarch and how they affect our country?
When I think of that, the Queen, her life was a life of service. And I very much feel that this is public service, what I'm doing here. It's serving the public in a whole different sphere. And it's incumbent upon me to respect this position. So when we go with like protocol, like the importance of following protocol, like with the monarch, with, you know, that is important. And people expect that when I go to certain events, there's more protocol than others. So I have aides de camp who are assistants to me. I have 26 of them, by the way, because if I have 400 engagements in a year, probably 300 or 325 of those require an aide. Now sometimes the courtesy visits, I don't need an aide here. Or if I meet with one of my patronage organizations, I have 38 of them, you know, to brief or whatever, I don't need an aide there. But they accompany, so we prepare a function sheet for each activity I do, out of the house or in, which requires the aide. So then one of my admin assistants makes up the calendar or the schedule for the month, sends it out to the aides, and they will get back to her which activities they could do. It's a lot of work. There's tons of work. Anyway, I'll try to get the other thought after if I remember. And they come. They have to connect with the organization. They find out what time I'm expected to arrive. If there's a meal, they have to say that I'm diabetic and that I should have fruit for dessert, although if they put a piece of cheesecake, I will probably get into it, have some of it. But, you know, things like that, or my food allergies, they have to let them know that. They also have the contact of the person, the phone number, so if there's something happens on the way there, they have to contact that person, they cell phone, they call them. And we have to have a driver too. I have three drivers with the official car. They take me to most of those events as well. What else is there? And then they find out what are the requests. So am I requested to speak, to give a welcome, to give a speech, to give whatever, or just to mingle with the people. And after the event, would you like Her Honor to mingle with the recipients of the awards? Whatever it might be. And is it a formal entrance? If so, they have to announce, the aide will announce, please, invited guests, please stand for the arrival of Her Honor the Honourable Antoinette Perry, Lieutenant Governor of Prince Edward Island, and remain standing for the singing of O Canada, or for the Viceregal Salute. Now the Viceregal Salute belongs just to the head of state, so to me on the island. They wouldn't play it for the Premier. So it's God Save the King, it's the first part, the first 8 bars, and the last 8 bars of O Canada. And I stand at attention, so for that, no one sings when that's played, but if we sing God Save the King or O Canada, everyone sings, whether there's a leader or not, and if it's here in the house, usually I will lead them, having been a music teacher in that group. And and then we sit and we follow the path, the protocol. So I'm announced at the door. I have to walk behind the aide. Sometimes I wasn't fussy about walking behind anybody, but anyway, you learn. You follow the protocol. So that's the thing. And you know, hey, you play the game, you learn. You know what it is. But that protocol is very important too. And then when there's, like, for example, the celebration for the King. So we had the military here. We had 220 cadets and probably another 200 military. 700 people were on the property here. And it was a community celebration, you know, very important. What was the other thing I was going to, so just to give you an example, for an event that might last like an hour, or even this event here, so every contact you made with Cindy, and then your time to get here to prepare, for my preparing myself, because I have to count in the time to dress too, because sometimes I have to change. One day I had 8 events. I'll tell you about that day after. And so all that, if you want to count the people hours, just the 4 of you, me, Cindy, you're driving here, you're probably looking at maybe 16 to 20 hours, maybe total, because you're going to be doing some work after this is recorded. Now, and if I go, like, for example, to I'm going to take one event the other night, like the Chamber of Commerce there. I didn't have to speak at that one, so I didn't have to get a speech ready. But taking in my aide's time, the driver's time, the connections between my aide and the organization and Cindy, my executive assistant, and my time, the driver's time, the aide's time, and all that. We're looking at probably 20 to 25 hours at least for one event. Very tight. So my day, coming to a question I think that you have, if I'm okay to go into
Yeah,
it.
sure, go ahead.
So my day, like today, so I get up, I have my breakfast usually at the same time, about 8 o'clock roughly. I'm diabetic, so I try to follow as much as I can. And then I had a few things to discuss with some of the staff. And then I went up and got ready, put a few curls in, and get my dress on, what I feel most comfortable wearing then, because I have 3 closets full of clothes, maybe 4. And because I change, I like to dress to suit what the occasion is. So for example, this is the dress I wore when I went to see Her Majesty. So I felt like this was a thing about my regal part of my role. So I thought I'll wear this. I still fit, so I'll wear this. And we were asked to wear a business dress or a business suit. And so for me, I was more comfortable wearing a business dress. So anyway, that day I had 8. So, oh yeah, I'm going to keep on. So then here, now this afternoon, this is Wednesday, yes. So I have to go and get a vaccine. So I was able to get an appointment to get a vaccine this afternoon. And so, and then the rest of the day I have a few other speeches I have to kind of put a fine tune to. And this evening I might go back in the office for a while, but I'm not sure. So this is a relatively slower day. But that day I had 8. So I met a consul general from I forget which country it was. It was at 9 o'clock that morning. At 10 o'clock there was a high school visiting here, a group of students, and I give them a 20-minute briefing before they start. Then another group at 11 o'clock, no, 10:30 started. And at 11 o'clock I had a photo op with one of my patronage organizations, I think the Alzheimer's group, because they wanted a photo op, and then we put their flag up on the pole for that day or a week or a month, whatever their cause is. And then after that I had an appointment, a personal appointment after lunch. At 3 o'clock I had to change and put a black suit on because I was going to the funeral for the viewing for a former pastor from my parish. It was at the Basilica. And then after that, that was at 3 o'clock. At 4 o'clock I had to be at the Charlton Hotel for the retirement party for the clerk of the Legislative Assembly. And I didn't have time to come and change, so I kept my black suit on for that, but I had worn a white shirt, so that was a little bit breaking the black. And then at 6:30 that night, I had a formal dinner in here, so I had to wear a cocktail dress.
Wow.
So that was 8 that day. So from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, there wasn't much breathing room. A little bit between my appointment in the afternoon, ended about 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Yeah, but I had to change again. I changed 5 times that day. So that's just, and that was, but I don't repeat those days much, you know. And thank God I have lots of energy. But there's some days I wane a bit. So it is busy. The norm would be like, I wouldn't go more than 3 usually, but it's not unusual to have 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 at night, because a lot of banquets happen at night. And then I have to be careful too to take care of my health, because if I have a banquet at 7:30, then I have to have something around 4:30, because I could go into a sugar low, you see, by then. So I have to really watch, that. The only thing, I don't get enough exercise. I don't walk enough. I love to walk. Last night I got my 1.5 kilometers in, but anyway, I do love yoga, and that really makes a difference in how I feel. And the chef here prepares me my big meal at noontime with lots of good stuff. 3/4 of the plate is vegetables, which is great. And,
Very nice.
yeah, and so I try to eat, but I'm a fanatic for chips. You know, we live in PEI. What can I say? French fries, chips.
Very true.
We're islanders, you
Very
know.
true.
Yeah, talk about your cultural.
Part of our diet. Speaking of,
I wanted to ask it, but I mean, you wrote the
I think
question.
you-
no, I know
It's
it was going like I was speaking of you talk about chips and food and stuff like that, and I said probably the burning question on PI is and I think Jay Scotland tried to get this out of you one time actually by coming here and filming a segment.
Oh yes, I gave him the recipe, don't
What? Oh, did you?
I did.
But I'm just wondering if maybe because I know it's not a state secret or not a provincial
No,
secret or it's
no.
not a it's not a regal secret, but
Yeah.
if you were to help advise islanders who are curious about making meat pies, what is some of the, I guess,
Just go with the recipe
the
that you were taught from your grandmother or mother. Everybody loves their mother's meat pie the best, you know.
Yeah.
So and I find a lot of people want to add a lot of extra and change the flavor of that. If I want to go with the authentic meat pie, that's what I will do. But now that being said, there is a traditional and a non-traditional meat pie contest that happens before Christmas in Rustico. They started that. They had the second year this year, and so if you're making a traditional meat pie, we'll go with tradition. Now sometimes we'll add a little bit more. For example, I can't get the old mature hens anymore. You can't get your hands on them. My grandmother always used that, and they didn't break up as much as chicken. And I always loved the flavor because we use that in a lot of the Acadian recipes, patin pot, fricot, all that. And we put the old mature hens. They killed them and they would never waste them. So what I did is I add dark meat from the turkey, like the turkey drumstick or the hip. I prefer the hip that I add with the chicken and pork. And I always, for good measure, add a little chunk of beef in there, and that broth is so tasty it's not even funny.
Really?
Yeah,
That would give you a flavor. Yeah, interesting.
yeah. And then my grandmother always used the pickling spice.
Yes.
People use cloves, they'll use allspice, all different things. With us, it's the pickling spice. And if you saw that segment with Jay, when I brought the hammer out, he said, "Where are you going with that hammer?" And we put the pickling spice in a little cotton pooch.
Okay.
And you bang the vajayjars right out of it, you know, with the hammer. And that's where now they use, of course, the coffee grinding little machines
Yeah.
there to grind the pepper mill or whatever they want to use. Yeah. But I still like going with the hammer. I don't know. To me, it's as if my grandmother and my mother are sitting one on each shoulder. You know. Yeah.
But no, I said I can visualize it now. It's almost you can taste it, right? So.
Yep.
So now, it seems like doing 400 things in a year, Your Honor, that can get pretty tiring. So is there anything else besides cooking that you really like to do?
I like going to concerts and that as well.
Oh,
but,
very nice.
Oh yeah, I've gone, actually this summer after COVID, I think I went to 30 different concerts that I went to, you know, to support the local arts and that. But I love to watch, I love to see the performers. Live is always the best. I love to go to see the orchestra. We have a fine orchestra in PEI here, and I'm a patron, but still, I know I'm bragging about them, but I thoroughly enjoy. And so the conductor, now we're in the process of finding a new conductor. So the former conductor, Mark Shapiro, is from New York, and he was with us for I think about 10 seasons.
Oh wow.
And there are 4 concerts a year, and he would come for 3, and there'd be a guest conductor for 1. So he retired from the position. He's still in New York. Actually, I'm going to be seeing him in April. He conducts a choir, and he invited me to go and hear his choir at Carnegie Hall. So, and that's my bucket list. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to be checking that one off my bucket list. But no, the orchestra, and you know, most of the musicians are from the island, but we have some from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick as well. Same as some of the islanders will go with their orchestras for some of the performances, especially if they need a big orchestra for a big orchestral production. So that I really thoroughly enjoy. And then, of course, the finals for the music festival, when I can get there, is great because I was very involved in the music festival at home to try to encourage especially the piano players and the vocalists to hone their art, to be able to present it in the festival and be adjudicated. That was always good. Anything to do with the arts. I like, you know, I wish I could take some painting lessons. Maybe when I retire from here, I will take painting lessons. I'd love to be able to paint. I love going to the art gallery up here. Anything to do with the arts is really interesting. Cooking, of course, too. So
Of course.
tasting the different delicacies that we have on the island. And like I put in my bio, is going out and discovering the treasures in PEI. You know, visitors come here and I just tell them, well, I hope you'll discover some really precious treasures on the island. Every time you turn another corner, there's something new. And the worst that can happen, you will discover a beach that you never knew existed before.
Yeah.
That's the worst that can happen. How
Yeah.
bad can it be? I love to walk the beach. My favorite place to walk is on the beach.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Water is my nature element is water.
I can second that, Your Honor.
Yeah,
I can
it
second
sure
that.
is. It revives me, it placates me, it whatever. Yeah, water
is.
is my element. So I love to swim.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I won the big lotto, maybe I'd have a private.
I don't know if we have any further questions. I have one more on my page here, unless I just don't want to jump to it unless other people have other questions they wanted to.
No, I think
You can, I said if anything, yeah, anything pops out, but I just,
Finally, Your Honor, looking back on your career and your time as Lieutenant Governor, what do you hope your lasting legacy would be?
I would have to say education. Educating, connecting with people and educating them about the necessity of having this position. It's even just every time I sign those documents, it's sort of another layer to accountability, and I have a right to question things as well too. There's a few questions that I had that are coming up, but anyway, yeah, it would be education, and no matter what role you're in, if people understand what you're doing, I think there'd be less of this trolling on the internet, on the social media. There'd be less harassment. Like I remember some of the bullying that went on in the school when I was teaching, and you know, if we could only make an informed decision about that person, don't jump to conclusions and don't try to get to know them or whatever. But that whole aspect of our society right now is a really challenging element, which is very predominant in our society. Like I think of, you know, with the anti-vaxxers or whatever, like with the, you know, the how should I say, the riots, those things. We have a right to, you know, to riot. We have a right to our opinion. Yes, but you don't have a right to take away somebody else's rights while you're doing it.
Yes.
When you go to the level of taking away another person's right, then it's no longer okay. Yes, we have free speech, but there's a way to do it. And it's not by infringing upon another person's rights and their privileges. That's the way I see it. Now that's my personal opinion. Because that's the way we were brought up. Even with the language thing, when people used to make fun of our French, it was a dialect. When I went to university in Moncton, there were many people, many Acadians from all different corners, and some of them made fun of my French. And I got to the point, okay, I became informed then about their language and that, and so I was able to counter that. But it's, you have to become informed in order to counter any of those negatives. And my word is gratitude. It always was, and it's even more so since the pandemic. What helped me keep a positive attitude was I had to practice gratitude every day, where I was grateful for at least three things. And then I would connect with people on social media or call them or whatever. But to me, gratitude turns a negative energy into a positive. If I can change my attitude from being negative towards something and be grateful for that person instead of putting them down, I turned it into a positive. There's like a magic transformation when I can take my whole attitude and change it from that negative to positive. If I'm sick, if I can be positive enough to give me the energy to surmount that sickness, to get to where I feel better, that's a positive transformation. And I've seen it transform situations, people, everything.
but we want to thank you very much for this opportunity. And when we kind of started this idea of the Train Station podcast, and it was kind of initiated at a Rotary Youth Parliament, of which you addressed.
Yes.
And it was like, how can we best use this opportunity to educate and
Yeah.
inform and engage young people,
Yes.
in particular these young gentlemen's, their age group,
Yeah.
and to become active members of her. And and by meeting various islanders, we're seeing ways in which people can play a significant impact and get
you
involved.
can be productive. You can
Exactly.
be a productive person, engaged and be productive in our society.
And it takes all of us to sustain a
Yeah.
community, right?
And if you wanted to, like on our website, we have quite a bit of information and links in that. And I did make a short video during the pandemic. It's 8 to 9 minutes, and again, in keeping with education, because I couldn't connect with people. So it's the educational video on our website, www.lgpei, Lieutenant Governor PEI.ca, lgpei.ca. And on that, it's about 8 minutes, but there's video clips of me carrying out some of my duties. So I think it's Mark Lorenz that I'm doing the Order of Canada to. I kind of forget now which one, but yeah, it's quite a thing. And we have huge scrapbooks. We're on the 7th one, I think, of all the things I go to, pictures and all that. So it's going to be saved digitally, and it will become part of our archives. So, which is quite interesting. There's pictures, there's programs of different events. There's the cards, the Christmas cards. I didn't put this one in yet because we don't have our official picture yet, so I want to show that one. Yes, and that's quite a project. One of the staff is in charge of taking care of that. There are these big pages like this. They're huge books, and they will become mine. But I will then give them back to one of the heritage sites, probably the Acadian Museum. And but it will be saved digitally, and I will have a digital copy. Yes. Yeah. So. But that video is worth looking at. Actually, when I go visit schools, I ask the teachers if they could show it, and so the students have a more informed approach to my visit, and they can ask questions. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Well, it's my pleasure.
Yes.
And thank you for such an interesting project. I'll have to go and listen to your other podcasts.
Thanks.
Thank
I